Good afternoon, all. It's a real pleasure seeing you coming and visiting again our ODNE YouTube channel and watching all the videos from the series of People of Gestalt in ODNE. Today we have a pleasure to travel from North Macedonia to UK and have Ann Shuptrine as our guest speaker. And welcome. It's a pleasure seeing you in this setting. And Angelica, hi to you, because I always forget to say hi to you. And welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure having you.
Yeah.
For those of our viewers who are maybe not familiar with who you are, I'm going to briefly introduce you, and then we'll start with our dialogue, discussing and exchanging about how you use Gestalt in OD and how you do your practice. So basically, you're passionate about life, you have an adventurous spirit, a creative heart, and a deep curiosity about people and human relationships. You grew up in the deep south in the United States and have continued growing up since moving to London over 20 years ago. You have master in photography and sociology, bachelor in psychology, you're a Gestalt practitioner in organization and part of EAGT GPO, certified open floor movement teacher, and mindfulness and meditation. You're an embodied creator-innovator, coach, consultant, trainer, facilitator of open floor conscious movement, and artist based in London. Your approach is artistic, experimental, and experiential, harnessing creative process through the human body. Passionate about how embodied presence can transform our lives and indeed life on earth, you support individuals and organizations as they cultivate new approaches to being in the world. You share your creative vision to help others discover how the artistry of embodiment can inspire deeper, more meaningful relationships, enhance creativity, potency, and affect change. You run personal and professional development workshops, groups, and trainings to the general public, facilitators, and businesses internationally. We are currently developing embodied social art thought experiments, combining artistic practice with Gestalt to create immersive inquiry around global issues to inspire innovation. We are an Associate of Gestalt organizations, Relational Change based in the UK, and Gestalt in organizations based in North Macedonia. You're a working member of Open Floor International, sitting on the program implementation circle, delivering international trainings. So this is briefly who you are.
Yes. Thank you for introducing me. It's interesting to hear about myself from another person's voice. Yeah. Yeah.
Once again, welcome. And I think we can start with our dialogue, reflecting on how you actually started with Gestalt. So basically, you come from a corporate background. What is your story with Gestalt? How did you encounter it? Let's start from there.
Okay. So I find that question really interesting. How I come from a Gestalt background. First of all, actually, I just want to say, I'm feeling quite excited to be here with you, and it feels similar and different. You know, I know you both, as we were both students of Relational Change, and I've also worked with you in Macedonia. And so I'm just appreciating, this different context that we're in. And I'm feeling it. I feel this kind of like rush of energy, but also this warmth that I have for you both. When I hear these, that I come from a corporate background, I suppose I do in a sense, but I would never say this. When I think about where I come from, I feel like, well, I'm a dancer, and I've been a dancer since I was about 3 years old. And this is where I come from. I come from Selma, Alabama, a place that maybe I might have wanted to run away from at different points in life, but I'm from there, you know, and I'm an artist. And I suppose, you know, my journey has led me to the corporate world in some ways. But my first introduction to Gestalt was as a student of psychology in university. And so I was, you know, introduced to Fritz Perls and Gestalt as one of the many kind of philosophies of psychology. And originally, I was meant to be doing a PhD in psychology when I left university, in clinical psychology. And I just wanted to share this because, you know, I originally thought that, oh, I can't be an artist because I'm not really good enough to work as an artist. And my other passion was psychology. You know, human relationship was deeply fascinating to me. And when I didn't receive my first, when I received a no from the first application to a PhD program in the States that I was hoping to get a scholarship to, I kind of thought, I was really upset actually. And I thought, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Like why, you know, why am I going to be going into something where do I really want to do something where I'm going to be studying statistics around human behavior? You know, I started kind of looking at the program and I got a little bit confused. And I thought, I need to travel and I need to experiment. And so I suppose my experimentation with life and what I was exploring and wanting to do, it led me to London, and it led me to experimenting in the corporate world, funnily enough. It led me to exploring my creativity in the corporate world. I thought, well, if I can't be an artist, or maybe I can be an artist, but in a different way that I thought what an artist did, you know, was like painting and sculpture and things like this. So that's how I got into the corporate world. And it was really very much about experimentation. And I just want to say this because, you know, experimentation is so much at the heart of Gestalt. And this experimentation in the corporate world, in advertising, in the arts, in architecture and culture, that journey of experimentation also led me to, in a way, conscious movement. Because I became a bit dissatisfied with the structure of many organizations, and I started really questioning, like, is this really what I want from my professional life? And although I was dancing all along in different practices, it was not until I started dancing in 5 rhythms and conscious movement that I was reintroduced to Gestalt. Yeah. And so Gabrielle Roth, the creator of 5 Rhythms, she worked alongside Fritz Perls at Esalen. So, you know, there's some influences there. And later on, I became, after following 5 Rhythms for many years, I decided to train in a similar practice called open floor movement. And so an open floor was born out of 5 Rhythms. And it took a bit of a different turn because Andrea Johan, one of the founders, was also a Gestalt psychotherapist. And so she was bringing more of Gestalt into the practice, into the movement practice in school. So, so my journey has kind of, you know, when I think about Gestalt, actually, it's been around for a while in my consciousness. And after studying, while I was studying with open floor movement, I then started thinking again, do I want to do that PhD? You know, over the years, it's like, do I really want to do that PhD, and what am I going to do it in? And I started looking into different programs, and I Googled embodiment and Gestalt, and I came across Relational Change. And that's where I trained as a relational organizational Gestalt practitioner alongside both of you. So, so that's a little journey of how I came to Gestalt. Yeah.
Thank you. You took me to Esher, to the day I first saw you, and how fascinated I was by your presence. Even back then, when we started to work, and still am, whenever you work. And your work is anchored in embodied presence. It's really paradoxical to talk about embodied presence, but could you tell us something more about it?
Well, embodied presence is my work around embodied presence, I would like to say, is very informed by the work of Dr. Sally Denham-Vaughan and Dr. Marianne Shidiak, as well as Dr. Andrea Yuhan. And I'm very inspired by their work. Embodied presence is a relational dance of resonance between self, other, and environment. This co-emergence, I suppose, inspires creative possibility. And I feel that in order for us to be present relationally, it is a very embodied process. When we're relational, embodied presence is through our physicality. It's through our senses. It's also the emotional body, the mental body, all the dimensions of embodiment, which is not just about the physical, but the physical is very important. And I feel that process of relational presence is best supported through embodied resources. And this is some of the work that I think I've done. I did in Skopje, and so it's really around how we can be with experience, how we can tolerate experience, and I feel that this is through the body, through embodiment.
Both of us are silent because I was trying to unmute myself. Sorry for the silence in between. What you just reflected on really resonates with me on many levels, and I will follow what Angelica said, that both of us are somehow witnessing your amazing work when it comes to following body process and working with embodiment, and that being said, with presence. So related to these two aspects, I would also like to ask you a bit more when it comes to how culture differences, or how culture responds to your way of working. Because in the intro and in what you have been sharing in the story of how you actually encountered Gestalt, you brought that you come from Alabama, US, and that for the last 20 years you have been living in UCAN, so that's two different cultures. And I'm just curious of how these different cultures are actually responding in your way of working, and do they affect in any way when it comes to what types of interventions maybe you choose to implement when working?
That's a great question. And it's a question that I find so interesting, and I'm still discovering. So every time I work with a group of people, no matter where they are, it's different depending on the situation, the environment, the dynamics within the group. And culturally, it is fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating how different people from different cultures will have a different response and different needs, and different ways that they may need support. It definitely, when I'm working with people in different countries, you know, I might have an idea, if I've never been there before, you know, I might have an idea of what it might be like. I suppose I go through a process of kind of, you know, researching the history of this place, the current political, socioeconomic situation, and I kind of try to place myself there in the way that I can. You know, of course, I have my own experience. I have my own family bringing and everything. But I do try to, I suppose, come with some type of empathetic way of being. And I might have ideas of how they may respond. And of course, sometimes I'm totally wrong. Sometimes, you know, and it's really fascinating in the moment what you'll find, or what I find in working with people. And so, yes, it is different. It is very different. And I don't know if we should go into much detail about it, but
what you were just saying, I was reflecting when you were in Skopje, because I can recall the first day when we saw each other and when we met. We were sitting in a pub and discussing about North Macedonian history and the context. And I remember that we were preparing a lot of details for you and links for you to read so that you can prep yourself. And I would agree that preparing and understanding other people's culture is a key when it comes to at least understanding their context, even though we never know what might emerge as we step into the present moment and see who we have opposite of us and with whom we are working. But I'm really fascinated of how you're preparing yourself before you actually start working with groups and individuals who are coming from different cultural setting and background than yours.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you mention my work when I was with you in Macedonia, I'm just kind of recalling that group and that workshop, and it was so beautiful, such an inspiring group of people to work with. And it reminds me of, I suppose, every time I'm working with, whether it's with an individual client or a group of people, I try to provide them or introduce them to embodied resources that might support the process that we're going to be going through together, as well as something that they can take into life. And I remember, you know, one of the resources that I always use when I work with groups is the resource of ground. And it's really fascinating, depending on where you are in the world, what one's relationship to ground is, how much support we are able to kind of find from groundedness or not. And, you know, the experience of even just putting one's feet on the floor can have a hugely different effect on different people, depending on where they're from and what the political situation is. You know, there's many countries that it's not easy to feel a sense of groundedness when the ground is always moving beneath one's feet, when everything is constantly changing. So I find it a real pleasure and privilege to be alongside people as they discover this. And I feel, it's hugely, it makes such a huge impact on me as well. And it gives me such a greater understanding of the other's experience. So it's a question that I think I could talk about all day, really.
And on that line, the next question is related somehow to what you were talking. How do you think, you said with a constant shift, and it's true, in the Balkans, until 2020, we were really the masters of shifts around us. And now somehow the shifts are worldwide, and the COVID situation, and Black Lives Matters, and a lot of other movements going on the world stage. How important do you think is embodiment and working on body awareness with working with diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, I think it's very important. When working with diversity and inclusion, I think it's so important to understand our own experience of being in our own bodies first, and to be able to tolerate one's experience within one's own body. And I mean, this is a huge step for many people. As we become more embodied, it not only supports us to be with experience, but we start to be able to track and understand why we move the way we move in relation to others and the situations we encounter. So I really feel that embodiment is absolutely vital to understanding how we relate in the world, and how we are similar and how we are different, and how that changes what I decide to do, every action I take, every step that I make towards or away another human being. And so I really do feel that the practice of embodiment and finding resources with embodiment as a way of exploring inclusion and diversity is absolutely vital, and it's extremely important work to be done. Yeah.
And as you're saying it, I've never thought of it that way, and it makes complete sense. It's a really important topic, and knowing that our body has memory, and even memory from our ancestors, the reaction that we have, being aware of the reaction that we have on an embodied level and how we can change it is vital for the work of diversity and inclusion.
Yes. I mean, thank you for saying that as well, of saying, yes, the body is full of stories of our own experience as well as that of our ancestors. And so although through embodiment we can begin to track and understand why and how we move, there is also an element of a real deep work around something that has been embedded and in us for generations. And I mean, this is very deep work. And I think it can take a lifetime in some ways to kind of understand that and grapple that. But is trauma embedded in the body? Yes, it is. You know, the stories of trauma through our own lives and through our ancestors, as well as, you know, the oppressor. And so it's such important work to just start to understand the edges of that. And I think even going to the edges of it is a big, big step. I think there's more work to be done, but it feels like it has to start kind of here, because it's so much a part of us. It's so much a part of everything that we do. And embodiment is an absolute vital route to understanding it. Yeah.
Thank you for you bringing all of this. And as you were talking, I became aware that a lot of, maybe not a lot of, but a good number of organizations have been talking about diversity and inclusion. But at least to my knowledge, I haven't been aware of organizations to be talking loudly about embodiment work. And I'm just curious, from your stance, how important do you think is embodied work for corporations or in the corporate world? How important is for organizations to be investing and paying attention on embodiment and embodied work as such?
Well, coming from a corporate, let's say a corporate experience, my experience in the corporate world is that many times, not always, but many times, it's very disembodied. And, it can be very much what we're seeing right now on the screen of each other. Actually, in some ways, this is kind of representative of how many organizations might have been kind of running in a way, in terms of it's all kind of up here, and of course we are much more than just the mind itself. And I feel like if we are to look at kind of restructuring the way organizations work, if we're to look at changing the way systems work, we're going to have to look at it from a much more holistic way. And so I feel like embodiment and embodied presence, which really is about the whole self. It's really bringing in the emotional body, the sensate body, to really, we need to bring all of this in so we can really meet this moment right now with creativity and ingenuity. And for me, I feel this is through our embodied presence. So it's our whole selves, and it's resonating with the situation and the others within organizations, and from a micro to a macro level. I mean, this goes from the family unit to the big world situation. And I feel like businesses have been for a while, starting to open up a little bit more to embodiment, perhaps more of looking at it from a well-being standpoint, which is absolutely essential. Yes, we need yoga, we need, dance, we need these things as practices to keep people healthy. We do. We absolutely need it. And I feel like we also need it more in looking at ways of problem solving and innovating new ideas and thinking about how we can work more productively together.
Yeah. I do agree. I was thinking of some work we did recently on how important some of this embodied practice, although we don't call them that way in the corporate world, might be morning walks for 15 minutes, but doing something rather than sitting on the chairs. Thanks. And we're at the end of this interview. Could you tell us a little story of your work as a consultant and the use of Gestalt approach?
Yes. It's I'll tell you a little bit about a new project that I'm working on. Someone that I met not too long ago actually I've spoken to them about speaking to you today, and I felt that I might mention it if there is an opportunity. And their company is going through a seismic shift. And I think it's definitely as a result of the global situation that we're going through at the moment, the pandemic. They have offices in London, quite a large office. And for the last couple of months, they've been fighting to keep the office because I believe the owner of the building was possibly having to sell it. And so there's all kinds of contractual situations happening. But and in the meantime, after all they're fighting for this organization, they're now losing major projects. And it's, these are just two things happening within the organization. There's, and their employees are feeling it, and so are the board. The board is feeling it. And I think that, they approached me because they needed to kind of look at the situation differently, and they were open to exploring something quite different. And so my approach, which is an experiment, and it's an experiment, I suppose, and it's an overall experiment in relational presence, in embodied presence, of how they might meet the situation, or at least come together in some kind of collective insight. And so what we're doing, what I'm supporting them to do as an organization, is to take pause in different aspects together in the organization, to physically take pause and to try to, as we are physically taking pause in different ways and experimenting with pause, we're also experiencing what's happening in the present moment together within their offices. We're doing this on Zoom, and we're doing this in different ways. We're doing it outside. And it's really fascinating to see how much insight is being cultivated through this practice of taking pause together, this experiment. And so much insight is being generated by employees as well as board members about their experience of being within this organization, their experience of being with each other, what their values are, and how this might totally change and shift the way this organization might go in the future, because it has to change, and they are changing, but they also want to have some creative impetus of where they might go. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a current piece of work that I'm working on, and it feels like embodiment is absolutely essential, and taking pause isn't always easy for us to do, but in this moment in history, there's so much going on, and there's so much insight that we can gain from our experience of being with the situation right now. And that really excites me. And this is deeply rooted in Gestalt and embodiment practice, which relational Gestalt is.
Thanks. It's a really interesting story. And it really pictures well your work, multi-layered work in organizations.
Plus, it contrasts the fast speeding, I would say, business world that we are currently finding ourselves in. And I would agree with you that pausing and sitting with actually gives more information and more wisdom if we're able to tolerate the unknown and just work on supports and ground ourselves and work with what is in the moment. And the world as such, as you said, is passing through a chaotic phase in this moment, and a lot of changes and a lot of levers are something that we're facing on a daily level.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, and it's been a real pleasure speaking to you today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been great to speak with you both. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you.